Do you see the ROG, Xbox Ally is essentially providing the template for all quote-unquote Xbox hardware going forward? Instead of a first-party Xbox with its own console operating system, could we just be getting living room PCs from Asus, Lenovo and others that by default boot up into the Xbox UI mode of Windows? And could the intent of this pivot be twofold? Microsoft washing its hands of a flailing console division, wow, and the need to subsidize hardware and game development for a specific platform, as well as a move to nip in the bud a potential threat from Valve with SteamOS that could challenge the company's core business, not just its gaming division. Well, I'm just going to say it again, Microsoft has committed to a 10th generation console. The extent to which it's going to be a console as opposed to a Windows PC with this interface, we don't really know. But Oliver, what do you think?
I think quite possibly this will be the case. I think that there's a good chance that it will end up looking like that with different versions of the kind of Windows box from different third-party hardware manufacturers, with maybe as well, I would imagine, maybe a Microsoft-led device in that mix as well, potentially. And then there would have to be some standardization of the spec. I don't know if they would all be using the same SoC. That would make it seem kind of like very redundant, but there would be some standardization, I would suppose, of the technical architecture of that console, whether it's based around maybe an AMD UDNA design or something, and then different price points and different specs within that family of architectures. There could be a lot of approaches that they would take here. But I think that is a very plausible future, and perhaps even a likely future for what the Xbox 10th gen Xbox will look like. And I would hope that by that time, Microsoft solutions for running these games will improve quite a bit, that it's a little bit more like SteamOS, and that it ends up being a very performant and acceptable way for people who are used to Xbox consoles to enjoy those games, because I don't think it will be exactly the same level of stability, exactly the same level of ease of use that a console offers. But I also think that a lot of Xbox gamers could probably be enticed to move on to this effort if it offered corresponding benefits like access to Steam, right? Like the ability to scale games well beyond where consoles are currently. There are a lot of advantages potentially to this approach. So it's kind of, if Microsoft can nail it on the interface side and somehow get Windows working in a format that really, really works well as an alternative to a console, I think they could have a hit on their hands. I also do think that third-party hardware manufacturers will probably be involved in some capacity, as we're already seeing with Asus with the Xbox Ally.
Mm-hmm. John?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo what Oliver's saying on this as well, but this seems like a good guess, I would say, in terms of where they might be going. Like you said, Rich, though, we don't know. They have confirmed the 10th gen, but we don't know what that actually means. But I feel like this would be a smart pivot for them, because it would essentially mean that they're still getting the games on their own OS and their own platform, but developers no longer need to create bespoke Xbox versions, as it were. Like maybe still optimize settings for Xbox, but not like a full separate build that's not based on the PC version.
Yeah.
Which I think would be very appealing to developers, right? Because it would definitely sort of be like, hey, you don't need to do all this extra work. Just adapt the work you've already done on PC to our platform.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think the optimized settings thing, we had a kind of glimpse of that with the Xbox Ally reveal, where they were saying that there would be settings assigned to groups of hardware with similar performance levels. So I guess, you would have an Xbox console group almost, or the 10th generation Xbox would fit into one of those groups, so to speak. I think that's probably what they're aiming for there. I think long term, I think it's probably a good idea because, Phil Spencer's talked about the end of the subsidized console model. And if you're not going to be producing one in the fullness of time, then, why not co-opt yourself into the existing PC ecosystem just by having a really good version of Windows out there? I think it just makes sense. And also, there's a lot of advantages for end users. I mean, I'm still sort of chuckling at the whole, you remember when PlayStation 5 Pro was announced and everybody seemed to be wanting to spec up a PC with equivalent performance. And the way they were doing that was kind of by, taking advantage of a competitive market. And, when an old piece of GPU technology, for example, is end of line, it tends to get a price cut. It's a sort of competitive landscape that just doesn't really exist on a console and could actually facilitate users to sort of roll their own hardware, so to speak, when they might have been traditionally buying a console. Also brings in all of those tens of millions of pre-built software. Pre-built PCs into brings those into contention as quote unquote Xboxes. I think that's probably the way things are going to end up. I still think though that the console has a role to play in kind of what can I say? First of all, providing a base, as it were, for stuff like Game Pass and for your first party efforts, and to define a brand identity. I think you need something like that. Which I think is what Steam Deck does to a certain extent. I think that's kind of something that this shouldn't be just completely ruled out. But we have to see where Microsoft go on this. We've certainly come a long way in a short space of time since the 4 games announcement. Do you remember that? The 4 games announcement. We're going to bring 4 games onto other consoles, which has since become we're going to bring everything onto everything.
That it's wild to think that single moment, how much change that has resulted in for the Xbox brand. I mean, Xbox today is completely different than 2 years ago.
Yeah,
like it's unrecognizably so. It's a completely different thing.
The funny thing is, of course, that the 4 games announcement was kind of made necessary by leaks of what has turned out to be the full strategy. Yeah, crazy stuff.